streaming and gaming could be in that micro sync world of people doing video game tutorials like a Call of Duty and having music playing in the background when they would do it. And I remember in that very first kind of like introductory conversation, they were saying like, hey, our goal is kind of to get brought out. Like we think they were thinking at that time they might get bought out by Microsoft. So to hear that, Song Trader kind of brought them under the fold. To me, that's probably one of the biggest moves that you mentioned, just because of how big that you know e-gaming community is, how big the gaming community in general is, but just how much advertising and marketing and movement is going in that direction. That I'm really excited about that idea of how it could open up realms for writers, producers, songwriters, artists like ourselves in this room, to get syncs and micro syncs and mediums that we hadn't previously maybe thought about or explored.
Great point, Psychosis. And so you had music on Pretzel. Yeah, they were totally new to me, and it's interesting to me because we already had this conversation about microsyncs focusing on YouTube and TikTok. Wasn't even thinking about Twitch. And now there's a whole nother library. I mean, in the last couple of months I've come across libraries that focus on pitching music to YouTubers, libraries that focus, I wouldn't call them libraries, but agencies or businesses that focus on providing music to TikTokers, and or providing music. I had a watched a good interview with someone who provides music to brands for TikTok specifically. So these are like 15-second, 30-second songs created solely for TikTok, like not 2-minute songs that are cut down, but a whole business built around providing these 15 to 30-second songs to brands for TikTok. And now we have, a company that pushes music whose sole focus is just Twitch, and live streaming on YouTube. So I find that really interesting that these communities are so big and their needs are so big that entire businesses are built around one particular application.
I will say that one thing that's exciting to me about this, and I don't know if this is going to be to our benefit or to our detriment yet, but I'd like to hope that it's going to be to our benefit, is that there's all these individual small companies that do a thing. One traces this thing, the other traces that. There's a data company. There's one that focuses on microsyncs. There's one that focuses on new Twitch things. No one has collectively done it all yet, or has been a good conduit, or even an aggregator of these kind of things. So it's interesting to me when a company wants to pull in all the pieces, which is a smart move, to see it says a lot about them. That says that maybe they're not going to succeed at it, but maybe they will. And maybe they're trying to, touch every piece so that we can have a little bit more of a 360 approach to things, which God forbid we have in this day and age. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, as a Song Trader subscriber, from my perspective, as a writer composer, it says to me, "Oh, this is really cool," because there's lots more opportunities that may come up kind of for music. Although I will say that so far, like I know a number of people who've gotten placements through Song Trader, but it seems almost all of them. And I don't. This is not a general rule, but the people that I've known or heard about have all been through internal curating, and not necessarily through the automated metadata search, which is supposed to be the strength of the technology. You put up music, you put your metadata on it, and the right brands looking for the right music find you, and you're really not even supposed to need the middle person curator. But like I said, I don't know if anyone here has heard different experiences, but for the people that I've heard with placements, it's been person driven.
Well, I can tell you that I've been on the receiving end of no less than 15, but probably more decks of various technology companies. There is one of my very close friends who's on our board, Rob Delph, created a company called RightsLine, which is a software as a service that was created for the entertainment industry, basically doing licensing for and automations and all those things that we're kind of talking about for the visual side and including cue sheets, but they never got to the music side of things really. And through Rob and through our iterations of trying to solve some of these problems over the years, we've seen many, many, many companies who claim to do that. And in my end, I will say collectively our experience, a lot of people talk about algorithms and the metadata and all this stuff, and nobody yet who has pitched us something like this, and these are big companies too, some of which we know in this room, has ever been able to prove it to a room of investors. And we've sat, looking for acquisition companies of this kind of nature. So I have yet to ever see it in practice where you can really replace, or AI can replace, or metadata can replace that kind of human interaction, mostly for two reasons. One, and Amanda, I'd love to hear your kind of extrapolations on this, but one, I think the entertainment business is very much built on relationships. We talk about that a lot in this room. And two is, the big question of can you replace, or how much creative and thought process can you replace with AI? And, there seems to be a great deal of chatter in the industry that you could do everything up to having a robot write a song, which I'm ready for the future. But again, I haven't seen anybody do it yet.
I saw you slow flashing, Amanda.
Well, there's certainly a major hole in the industry when it comes to this type of service, and a desperate need from people, especially in, I think someone mentioned Twitch, in like the social media space for easy ways to gain access to music that is able to be used, because the industry is catching up with the technology. So yeah, I think that there are quite a few companies coming up that are attempting to provide this service. I've personally seen one or two that I am excited about, but they have not launched yet. But I'm excited to see what the future holds, because this is definitely desperately needed.
Amanda, can I follow up with you about something since we're on the topic of Twitch? And for those of you who don't know Amanda, she's an amazing attorney with Barnes and Thornburg. But as an attorney in the room, I'm just curious, have you seen anything come up yet in terms of music being used in Twitch and licenses and other issues kind of resulting from, both Twitch and other kind of non-traditional mediums of content?
I can't speak to Twitch exactly for several reasons, but I can tell you that a lot of companies are trying to do direct licensing. A lot of companies are trying with individuals. A lot of companies are trying to license on more, I guess, unusual bases, including on blanket licenses with music catalogs, things that we've not seen before in pop music, especially. And it's a brave new world. Everything is changing, and access to music is going to have to catch up.
This is so fascinating to me, by the way. I just love this kind of conversation on where licensing is going, especially with Twitch. I've like kind of kept my eye on that. I'm like super interested to see where that's gonna go. So super fascinating about this. But I don't have anything to put in. I've just always kind of been a fly on the wall in those kinds of conversations.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
definitely.
I saw Carter jumping in.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. Stephanie, I hear what Steph was talking about, like, all the different platforms that sort of promise that they can aggregate all of this stuff and become a sort of turnkey solution to get all your stuff out to where it needs to be, or bring all the stuff into you so that you get it. And I've yet to see any of these work either. But I think that it's correct that you have to continuously search for new opportunities. Steph, Jason in my department. Like part of his whole thing is like, I'm like, find whatever we don't even know about yet, and let's see what we can explore there. And we get into all sorts of little micro license things and podcasts and game usages and tutorial music learning things and educational stuff that we wouldn't be exposed to if we weren't searching for it. And I just wanted to point out that, like, if you're working with a bigger company or even a smaller company, you got to kind of like do your own due diligence and find out, it's still a person to person thing. You still have to figure out those relationships and find the opportunities. They're out there, but I think it's correct that even with all the bells and whistles and micro this and micro that, it's still really about the personal connection and figuring out where you need to be and when you need to be there.
Carter, I love that you just brought this up because, again, for those of you who don't know Carter in the room, he is a publisher that works for one of the largest, if not independent publishers that is the size of a major but still managed to remain family run and independent. So he's kind of skirts the line between independent and major because of the size, but behaves like an indie. So it's interesting to hear you talk about, as a publisher, as large as you guys are, micro syncs and kind of these unique positions that you're, sort of searching for. And I guess that was, the general question: are all these new opportunities? It seems that all these new opportunities popped up. And I want to highlight one quick thing before we move on, and I'm going to kick it back to Eric. You brought up something we've never really talked about in this room before, which is there are all these really new alternative kind of licensing opportunities that had never been before, because at least with the invention of technology that keeps happening and keeps flourishing, people get a little bit more scared and a little less likely to just throw a song in an internal video, which used to be a thing without them asking. It used to be major corporations would be like, oh, we're just doing an instructional video, you mentioned. There are companies like E-Trade or, other companies that are doing content online that are now paying sometimes more money than commercials to do, instructional videos for their websites, for their consumers, which is a whole new world of licensing that they used to just not pay for. They just used to not bother. So I think it's really interesting, and I encourage I'm going to do it myself, and I encourage our whole room to, kind of continue thinking about that and discovering that stuff.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly to sort of, and then I'll shut up. But just to sort of support what Steph's saying, and also point out that when you do reach out, you are able to sort of train these companies to come to you, because for a long time, podcasts didn't license a damn thing. They were just like, "Hey, it's on the radio. What do you want from me?" But now it's a common practice. We'll get calls from audiobooks, and we'll get calls from This American Life, and we'll get people know to come license things. And same with just like people doing like wedding videos. Now all of a sudden, because people have been trained that that copyright exists, that musicians own their intellectual property, people are coming out to make sure they do it right. I think it's important to continue to explore these areas so that they can get caught up with what the right thing to do is.
I love that. I would love for Eric to ask. We kind of sometimes discuss potential topics and things, and we were kind of chit chatting about back to the getting spanked for not licensing music thing that these non-traditional companies tend not to do, and that they're learning. Look at Peloton, by the way, now that you bring that up. Peloton had a huge lawsuit back in the day because they were just kind of trying to get around licensing. Zumba is a huge licenser of music. What'd you say, Carter?
No comment.
Yeah, I knew somebody in the room would have that. But I think it's a lot. It kind of goes back to having these conversations, educating ourselves, educating our industry, and driving that conversation. But Eric, I would love for you to kind of talk about what's happening in the news with Twitch recently.
Yeah, it's really cool. So what we've been talking about with Twitch, this just came out. I think this just happened Friday of last week. But Twitch reported that it received about 1,000 takedown notices last week from different publishers. And mostly for video on demand. So just for our audience, the way Twitch is a live streaming community mostly made popular by gamers who their live stream while they're playing games, and then they build an audience who watch them kind of play these games and kind of see their strategies, and it's just become a whole community. And it's evolved to DJs who play live music. It's evolved to producers who produce live while streaming, and like so all these different. I mean, gamers are still probably the biggest community, but there's all these other smaller communities that have also grown on the app, and so it's been what's been. So the thing is, right, for up till now, if you're live streaming, a lot of gamers will play music in the background, have something entertaining happening, and they're just playing from their playlist of whatever. And then also there are DJs who do live DJ sets, and of course all that music is copyrighted, but it's DJ'd. And so up till this point, though, the takedown notices are mostly for the video on demand stuff, not for the live streaming thing. So the difference is, when you say you're a DJ, when you're live streaming, you're playing all these songs. When the stream is over, it's over. That music is not in existence. The stream is not in existence. But Twitch does give you the option then to archive that performance. And at that point, people can go and watch it kind of on demand. It's just like, if you live stream on Facebook or YouTube, that video can remain. So some people know that if you're using copyrighted music, then there are people who will advise you it's okay. No one's going to bother you for the live stream. But if you're going to put it on demand, you've got to go back and then edit it and cut all that music out. And a lot of people don't want to do that. But that's it's been kind of hands off for a while. Nobody's really come after them. But now within this year, there's been this is like the third or fourth, I think, in the last year of people getting takedown notices. And some of these, it's bad because some of these who got it, this is like their third time. And, within these ecosystems, it's kind of a 3 strikes, you're out. If you get 3 takedown notices, your account is suspended. So I don't know, will this extend into at some point coming after live stream, or how to do the editing? Amanda, I see you. I see you jumping in.
I deal with this a lot, actually. So I think the fundamental understanding that most people have to have is why live streams are okay and why archived is not. Specifically that when you're live streaming, it is a public performance, which is one set of rights under copyright law, whereas and you get a license for that from one of the performing rights organizations. And most of these services have those licenses in place already. So that's not an issue when it comes to the music licensing. Where you run into issues is when you archive these things and put them on demand. And that goes for any of these services, whether you're talking about uploading something to Instagram or YouTube or whatever. If you're putting something on one of these services that can be replayed at a later date, you need to have a synchronization and master use license for the music. A lot of people don't have that. And the technology has progressed faster than a lot of people can obtain rights. And there's been a little bit of miscommunication to commercial users and personal users of a lot of these accounts. And a big issue in licensing right now is that, generally speaking, the services have become I can't speak to Twitch, but like I know Facebook and Instagram have music licenses that extend to personal use, but not to commercial users. So if you are a brand and you have an Instagram account and you put something up that has music in it, it is your responsibility to license that music. So there's a divergence there between people's understanding of what they're allowed to do and what is they're actually able to do on these platforms. So that's where the major problems come in, and the takedown notices come in, and the then copyright infringement claims come in. So
I love that, and I appreciate the distinction, because I didn't understand that it was the fact that live streaming is covered under the performance, which makes so much sense. And I'm wondering, so if it's like you said, technology is advancing faster than the law, and I'm also wondering if it's also the culture that is advancing faster than the law is keeping up. Because if I'm a gamer, or a social media influencer, I'm not thinking separating my live performance from my archive. Like, from a gamer's perspective, it makes no sense to live stream if I can't also then save that for my followers. That's the culture. That's you live stream, you pull followers up after, and so they are kind of operating outside the law, because in one's perspective, what makes sense for their business is not in sync with kind of where the law is. And I'm saying this intentionally because I think, this leads also into, if you take a company like Epidemic, which I've up till this point refused to kind of talk about on the show because I didn't want to give them any more notoriety, but they released their financial results today, and they are continually growing bigger and bigger and bigger. They're still an unprofitable company, but their losses are decreasing. And the reason why I've always not wanted to talk about them is because they, say that they only work with artists who don't have, who are not affiliated with a PRO. It's a requirement. Music Business World, I think that's what it's. MBW reported on this. They have it on their own website too. That if you're not affiliated with a PRO, you can feel free to contact us about sending your music. Oscar, I may be pronouncing his last name wrong. Oscar Hoagland, I believe, who's their co-founder. He says that he feels like the demand for restriction-free music keeps growing, and that makes him very optimistic about the future. But he used that term, restriction-free music. So from his perspective, he's seeing a community or a client base that is being hamstrung by rights in various places or different things. And so he feels like his business is to so they do total buyouts. They buy out the music. They buy out the music from their composers. They pay the composers up front, and then they do give royalty. They'll split Spotify and YouTube, like Content ID royalties, 50-50 with the composers, but all of the sync fees are go totally to Epidemic. So it can be synced for eternity, and the composer will get none of those synchronization fees, but they will, if it's as long as it's played on Spotify, as long as it's streamed on YouTube, they will share in those. And so this seems like a company that, going back to kind of Carter's point earlier, where it's you have in relationships where companies are trying to say, we're trying to train people on how business happens. You have another company that is helping rewrite the rules for better or worse. And so I'm interested in thoughts just where that's going and kind of how you feel. I see you on Flash, Tommy.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave Amanda stuff. First of all, you brought amazing insight in a very simple way to a very complicated subject matter. So, thank you. And typically
my
we're up
pleasure.
here giving other people advice and we're all asking the same questions around because it gets complicated. We're about to film a YouTube episode where my artist is writing, and both of the other writers are known writers from known publishing companies. And at the end, we were going to present that song. It sounds like ultimately I would actually be building my own problem inside that episode from a licensing standpoint, which I never thought about. Is that true?
I would say definitely talk to your lawyer. It's
Good question. Good question. And that is where I'm going with it. And I'm so glad you said that, because that is definitely after that where I'm going with it. But I never thought we're creating ourselves and it's our music, but ultimately it's also two other publishers' music. And at the end, will they actually give us permission to actually visualize and write and film a song being created that ultimately at the end is a created body of work? So, Eric, I'm with you, man. This thing gets like 17 layers of complexity and we get lost in that world. And the attorneys, I guess, which is great, they get to win because that's kind of new territory for them as well.
I'll just kind of jump in to also say the artist wins, the writer wins, because we actually sometimes your job is, and I'm only speaking as a publisher right now, but sometimes your job is to protect the artist from the homies. So, in other words, you may have a friend who's like, "Dude, come on, I'm doing a movie, and I would just like to, like, let me just use your song," and then the artist has to, what they're supposed to say no to their friend. Sometimes it's our job to go ahead and make sure that everybody's getting paid. So the co-publishers have that obligation in your situation. And then I actually just had a situation today where a writer on our roster was on a TV show, like a talk show, and just started singing his song. And now we got to unravel that. But it's not like we're being a pain in the ass. But honestly, bro, I'm glad you started singing your song, but you deserve compensation for that. I'm glad you were on the show, and it's great that they were able to get eyeballs on you. But at the same time, you are worth something. Your art is worth something. The song that you created, that you sang, is worth something, and you should be compensated. So it really is a matter of, it's a matter of perspective. A lot of people are like, "What? I'm getting hamstrung by these rights," and a lot of people are like, "Oh, hey, that's my stuff." So
Yeah, I
it's a
understand.
tricky
As a
wicket.
publisher, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of artists are required to bring clear everything that they bring to shows like that. So you have the issue of depending on what is in the artist agreement that they signed to be on a show, they could be left holding the bag of the clearance, which is not the point. You don't want the artist to have to pay for their own music clearances.
That's true.
And the ultimate thing is I need to do all that up front prior to ever filming the episode and get all the paperwork done, so we're all in that agreement before we ever start
That's the
filming. So
best scenario.
it's that's a simple thing, and so both of you are extremely helpful and makes me just want to do more paperwork than I thought I was going to do before we actually filmed that particular
A lot of
episode.
that paperwork.
This is great. So much good info. So this has been cool. Normally we do our reset at the top of the hour, but I'm just going to say for those who are here that this is Control Camp. We are a community of musicians, songwriters, business people all coming together once a week to discuss issues around sync licensing. And this is our Campfire Convo, where we all brainstorm on and share thoughts and opinions on a variety of topics. We've been talking about a few things today. We've been talking about the song trader acquisitions that have happened. We've been talking for a while about Twitch and some of the takedown notices that have occurred. Let me switch total 180-degree switch to something different, and then we may come back to business stuff later. So one of the things we always talk about in this room, we do a lot of Sync 101 talk where we're helping people identify ways to get into the sync licensing space. And one of the biggest things that people ask about is relationships. Like going back where Carter was talking about how, and Steph were talking about how relationships are important on the business side. Everyone's question is, if I'm going to pitch my music or find an agent, how do I get those relationships? How do I even approach people? hitting people up, whether in the DMs or writing an email, we spend a lot of time in this room talking about that. And so it's because we have a variety of people on the stage. We have artists, lawyer, publisher, supervisors, producers. So I'd love to hear some stories from you all of successful cold pitches, either that somebody pitched you at some point in time and now you guys have a good relationship, or a pitch that you made that has now turned into a good relationship. I'd love to give our audience an example of ways where it was done correctly and then it turned into something fruitful. I know we have a lot of things that were organically created, but anybody have an example of a cold pitch that you were on either side of or witnessed that you can share?
Nobody, come
Well,
on.
I know I'm trying to think if there was like a specific cold pitch that wasn't organic and it wasn't like somebody at a library necessarily or something like that. Because it's usually like if somebody's at a company or whatever, then I'm.
All right, I got one. I was trying to abstain here,
Go for
but
it.
I can't shut up, obviously. So I had a dude call me. He got my number from somewhere when I was at Warner Brothers. And my whole thing is like, if you can find me, you deserve to be heard. You know, if you did the due diligence to get to my chair, then I got you.
I kind of love that.
Yeah. So, dude is like, hey man, yeah, you know, I'm a new artist, and I'm like, I'm really trying to hustle it up, and I hope I can send you some songs. I was, yeah, sure, send me some songs. And so he sent me some stuff, and I was like, it's just like, you know, in the sort of like 2008 era, like around in there. And he sent me some tracks, and I was like, well, these are all pretty good. You did these yourself? You're self-produced? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I can do anything you want me to do. I was like, okay. So we got this movie called Malibu's Most Wanted coming out with, you know, Jamie Kennedy and explaining the whole thing. White boy rapper. It's a comedy. It's retarded. You're gonna love it. You know, check it out. I need a song from like a Malibu's, like a straight out of Compton, but for Malibu, because that was the ridiculous conceit of this comedy. And then the dude sent me a song called Most Wanted in Malibu, and I was like, damn, that will work, because it sounded like I live in LA. I'm looking at like I'm on like the nearest cross street to me is like Slauson and Crenshaw. You know, I live in LA. And I was like, this sounds about right. This sounds correct. Played it for Jamie Kennedy, loved it. And then it ended up in the movie. It ended up being, I think, the opening credit and the music for the menu when you're watching the movie. And it was all because the dude took the time and had the guts to just reach out and try to make a dream come true. And it totally can happen. So there's my little story.
I love that. And I totally did not have Malibu's Most Wanted as coming up in this conversation anywhere today. So I'm really glad that
Nope.
that made its way to the table. That is so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Good,
I
Tommy.
can give a story that's like semi cold. It's like lukewarm. Like we were doing a lot of writing in a lot of ways in a lot of genres, and I had a person that was like, "I'm going to help you, you know, with first note, run first note kind of thing." Super great guy, you know, meant well, great intentions. Ends up deciding on the side to surprise me by writing with a group of people just to write for sync, which we had never done. Didn't tell me. Needed to be approved. Didn't turn in any of the songs. It was going to be the great surprise. And the great surprise was when I found out he had actually signed my signature to a rep contract in the sync world and forged my signature. And that's how I got into the sync business. But fortunately for me, I negotiated 8 songs out of it, gave him a goodbye note with great love and great flowers. And one of those songs ended up doing several $100,000 in sync. So that's how I got into sync, was by my signature being forged.
Wow.
Oh my God. This is the perfect time to give our litany of disclaimers, which should be never forge anybody's signature. It might have worked out this one time sort of for Tommy, but I think he noted that guy got, you know, kicked to the curb afterwards. But never, ever, ever. We're going to highly, highly discourage, and dare I say, just don't do it. And I stress that in this room because a lot of artists. I had one recently who's actually a mid-level, kind of like a B-list artist who was unpublished. I said, "Is there another songwriter on this?" And he goes, "It doesn't matter. I can sign for him." And I was like, "Unless you have power of attorney, you don't sign for anybody." But a lot of writers think that that's not that big of a deal to sign on someone else's behalf, or even forge a signature. It's kind of a rampant issue. I'll also give the backup disclaimer that I'm going to pick on Amanda a lot because she's kind of our resident lawyer in the room tonight. However, she's not our attorney for Control Cramp, and she's not our attorney for the room. So this is just her personal opinions, and remember to consult your own lawyer.
But she crazy smart.
She is crazy smart. She's like a walking like if all the law books were in a brain, it's Amanda's. It's uncanny. She's like Google for law.
Well, music law anyway.
It's true.
So for Rosie or Jessica, have all of like from the placements, I know you guys have like key people that you go to when you have a brief or whatever, but has from any of the placements or the people that you've dealt with, has anybody been like somebody who just found you or hit you up?
Yeah, just to finish what I was saying earlier, while I typically go through, or, if it's like someone that's reaching out to me that I don't know, but they're from a company that I know, like, I don't even want to include that here because it's like, well, the company's established. So while I don't have necessarily like a full complete story yet, I feel like even through like Clubhouse, for example, where people like slid into my DMs, relationships have been built, and like maybe we haven't gotten a sync yet, but it's still pretty new, and as we all know that this takes time. And I have like thrown music that has been sent to me from people like Psychosis to our editors, like 4 different trailers. And yeah, while it hasn't gotten across to the finish line yet, things are still, new and still building. But I still consider them success stories because the relationship has been built.
That is a success story. That's awesome. I really love that.
Psychosis, were you flashing your mic?
I was gonna say, more importantly than us talking about music is our new shared love for Portillo's, which is a Chicago-based restaurant, and
Yeah.
she's found one in LA. So, but no, yeah, I honestly consider me being on the stage right now as part of this. Like, it's not necessarily a pitch; it's more just about being present. Being present, getting to know people, establishing relationships, and also being authentic, trying to just be yourself. Because I think as artists, we put so much pressure on ourselves to perform and succeed because, we all get tired of people asking us that question like, "Hey, how's your little music thing going?" So we try our hardest to like make amazing things happen. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just like, as Steph would say, be a human and just holler at people and be cool. And sometimes that'll work out in your favor better than any marketing strategy.
Jess, were you trying to
Yeah.
jump in?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had similar situations to Rosie for sure. I mean, obviously that happens all the time, and yeah, I've definitely had people like ring me and email me, and it's all just about timing because like sometimes I've definitely had the emails that I just haven't answered. But sometimes you catch me at a great time and I will hit you back. And I'd be like, and I'm like, hey, I got a chance to listen to your stuff. Like, it's great. What else you have? And you do build a relationship from there. And it's just somebody that you just, another person that you can like go to. So yeah, you kind of have it in all sorts of ways. But I get it. Like, I can't like, again, I always just say it's like, because I mean, trailers or just because of the way things work, it's I'm so inconsistent with how I reply to emails that sometimes I do, and sometimes I just skip them immediately. I skip them. So yeah, it does happen.
Go ahead,
Totally agree
Rosie.
with
You were
that.
gonna
Yeah, I just want to say, Jess, I totally agree with that. And it actually makes me feel better myself because I will feel bad that I don't get to respond to things as consistently or as I'd like to. But it really is all about timing in the day that I'm having whether it's like I have to focus on something else that day and I really just can't, and then it gets lost. So, try again. It's really not anything personal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then it's also the timing of the projects that we're on. Like something, I might not need anything at the moment that what's being sent, but if I hear it again in a year and I might be on the exact same or the exact perfect project for it, or it gets on my radar that month I don't need it, but the next month I get a new project and it's like, oh my God, this is literally exactly what I need.
I have two follow-up questions for the room. One is,
So
I'm going
it's
to put them. Oh,
Steph.
go ahead, her.
Sorry,
Yep.
I saw Paige slow flashing. I just wanted to let her
I'm
jump
sorry,
in.
Paige.
All good, all good. No, I just kind of wanted to add on to what the girls were saying, because I'm kind of on the other side of that, where we're working with a lot of companies that are creating trailers, and I try to listen to kind of everything that comes into our DMs, or at least to my DMs, and also a lot of I've met through Control Camp and on social media. I kind of the same thing that Rosie was saying. We might not have something now, but I create a list of people and kind of their specialities and what they do, and if they're a vocalist, or maybe they have like really great production or saxophone, or like they know how to play some instrument that's not always needed, because a lot of the stuff that comes in for us, it's due the next day or due in 2 hours. And so a lot of it's rushing around. And so sometimes we'll get a brief that's like, hey, we need this with like with banjo. And then I'm like, well, who do I know that can play the banjo, or that can produce good banjo that sounds like real banjo? Or they need a choir, and we need to find a vocalist really quickly. And you just never know what you're going to need. So for me, it's like I might not be able to get you something right now, but sometimes I'll have 2 months later, I'll get something and I'll in my mind be like, oh my gosh, I know the perfect person for this. They reached out to me, then. And it's kind of what Rosie was saying, it's kind of a waiting game, and it might not, timing is also just so important. But I say, like, just keep sending your stuff, because you never know when it'll be like, oh no, you're the perfect person for this thing, and this person hit me up, 5 months ago, and I'll still be, you'll be on my list. So that's kind of my advice, is just, even though it might not feel like something's happening right now, you're still like on my mind at some point, and could need you on something big in the future.
Paige, you read my mind, because this is kind of what I wanted to follow up, and I want to kind of redirect to you and then open it up to the room. I would love to know from the room, have you had any Clubhouse success stories where people have, kind of cold pitched you in your DMs, or warmly pitched you, as Rosie so put it, slid into your DMs or whatever? Have you had any success stories of networking where something has come to fruition, or you've landed a song, or you've signed an artist that you love, or you're even deep in it with someone? And I'll start with Paige, because it sounds like you have, and then I'd love to hear from the room.
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten to meet a few people here who have actually connected me with some composer groups throughout the city, and I've gotten lists of people that are interested in making music for us, and have been really proactive in trying to kind of expand the composers and the artists that we're working with. That's been a big initiative of mine this year, and it's basically stemmed from Clubhouse, from the people that I've been able to meet. And then I've also been able to meet some other people that I've been able to kind of get in on job opportunities or interviews, and be able to like inform them, because I've created such a good relationship with them through this, just by chatting, not even necessarily about music or the business per se, but just getting to know them as a person. And I know that they'd be, great to work with. So I've definitely like seen job ads pop up and been able to send that their way, because they've just been so kind. And I kind of like want to say, like, come to the after party, because a lot of like what we're saying, relationships, it's not even necessarily about, talking about what we do or the industry. It's really like getting to know somebody is always really appreciative to reach out and, I listen to your music, but I'd also love to just get to know you as a person, because I want to work with, I want to work with people I like. So it's a big part of it for sure.
We
Well,
talk
I know that
about
I like
food,
you from your
Paige.
grilled
We talk
cheese.
about food.
Yeah,
Lots of
exactly.
food, lots of food. If you want to send me food, that's a great way. I support that.
I love that.
Everything goes down in the after party, clubhouse and real life.
If you haven't been
That's
to the
just
after party, you don't even know what you're missing. I'm just saying.
With that said, Eric, it's probably a good time, since it's 9 o'clock by you and 6 o'clock by me, to reset the room for those who, because I see a couple new people popping in. Do you want to do the reset?
Yep, let's do it. So if you're here, if you just walked in, this is Control Camp. We are a community of independent music creators, business owners, publicists, supervisors, etc., all coming together in this club to kind of exchange information and all level up in our areas of sync licensing. So if you're not familiar with sync licensing, and that is pretty much putting your music with film, television, ads, video games, etc. So we discuss all these things every Wednesday here at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then what you've been hearing us talk about, the after party, occurs right after this room. So every Wednesday we're here talking business for 2 hours, starting from 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. At 10 p.m., we go to the after party where we don't talk about music. It's more like kind of after a music conference where people are just hanging in the lobby or hanging by the bar. That's what our after party is. We really just kind of get to know people who are in the club. You have to be following or a member of Control Camp or in order for the after party to even show up in your clubhouse hallway. So right above my icon here where I'm speaking, Eric, you'll see the word Control Camp with a green house, a little green icon. If you click that, you'll be able to follow the camp. And if you follow the camp, then the after party will show up, and it's just a good time just to really get to know one another. So encourage you to do that, and then usually bi-weekly, every other Saturday, we have a listening session where you can play music. We had a great one this past Saturday. Lots of supervisors were on the stage listening to music from our community, and so you get to submit one song. You can go to our website, controlcamp.com, CTRLcamp.com, and you're able to submit one song there. You can go and submit it now, and it'll be in there for the very next listening session. We're not exactly sure when that's going to be yet, because we're all taking a trip to LA in a couple of weeks, so we're going to end up rescheduling that listening session. But usually it's bi-weekly. And what did I miss, Steph?
I think that's it. I mean, yeah, come to the after party and hear about Paige's delicious ideas for grilled cheese sandwiches and Eric's unfortunate predilection for putting pineapple on pizza.
Except when I'm
These
in New
are the
York.
things that we talk about. Anyway, continuing on with the conversation, because I love this. I'd love to open this up to the rest of the floor. I'd love to hear, I met some of my favorite people on Clubhouse, including Eric and Daraj, who I get to work with, and Herman, who's won now twice for us. I think it's an amazing asset. And essentially, you're basically kind of cold emailing or cold pitching people within DMs on here, too. So I'm curious, Psychosis, Rosie, Tommy, Jess, Deborah. Welcome, Craig and Deborah, to the stage. Have you had any good Clubhouse success stories?
I've had one that's super, super great. First of all, I got to meet a lot of people that's on this panel right now, and even below. That's all one big family in this room. So I got to meet a lot of really good people and developing great relationships. And people like Craig King and I go back 50 years, whatever. I don't know. I'm old. But I had a relationship, and this is kind of the power of Clubhouse. We were actually doing the stuff in your room. And then it went to another room and another room, and I started listening to some people, and there was a guy that really had amazing tracks. And so out of nowhere, I got a sync request in, and I had zero that it fit at all. So I knew his body of work was great, and he's in LA, so I sent him a thing, said, look, I got this request. it's a very large request. It's got like a $300,000 budget. He hits me back and he's like, "You really get these kind of things?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't have anything for this, and I've just heard your stuff." He said, "Look, my stuff's going to be complicated. Let's talk." We talked. Then he introduced me to this other guy that only does ad kind of energy hype kind of music. And we're repping now 50 songs for him. And he's not on Clubhouse. His buddy was on Clubhouse. And that was the introduction that led to us actually getting a new body of work and a piece of our library that we didn't have. And it all came from the relationships of about 5 different rooms on here, me just hearing his stuff and falling in love with what he did and knew it was value. And then he connected me to one of his buddies that doesn't even belong on Clubhouse. And we're able to do some stuff.
I love that. What about you, Deborah?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me up.
Hey, Deb.
Hey, I don't have any really that fascinating stories yet, other than I just really feel grateful and honored that I'm able to, help people if I am, like through the listening rooms and through this room and Indie Artists Connect and just kind of give back and give direction. I mean, I'm not surprised in a bad way. It's just a lot of emerging artists don't know how to even, copyright their music and where they need to register and how to get started. And it's very overwhelming and just trying to break down the process into like little steps and worry about the system versus the goal. So I think it's been, a great thing for me that way. I don't take, direct submissions, but I'm always happy to, hear and give feedback and notes if people are interested. But I'm looking forward to some really cool collaborations at some point.
You actually just said something really important, which I kind of want to kick back to you because we were talking about it a little bit in another room, and also kick to Amanda as well. Can you talk about not taking direct submissions and between you and Amanda too? Like, I think it would be really useful. It comes up a lot where people, for a long time has been a mystery of why musicians can't send unsolicited music, or you can't just, send your music to a company and stuff. And I know, Deborah, you're one of the companies that doesn't, even though you're so nice enough offline to listen to stuff. Would either of you be able to talk on that subject a bit?
I mean, I can talk on it, from our perspective, and that's just because, we are, a content creator in terms of, a full service, music house, but we also, rep, 65 different libraries from around the world. And, most, if not all, of the decisions, that are made in terms of, which tracks, which composers are worked with and which tracks get absorbed into the library, and ultimately which deals are done, are usually happen at the sub-publisher level, meaning the libraries that we partner up with, some we have, agreements with for 30 years, 35 years, and, they're working with composers and they're taking our feedback and, our temperature and, what we're asking for. And, years ago when the company was a lot smaller, we had a little bit more influence and we were able to pass along, submissions, but it got to the point where it was just, think about a global company and a global aggregator of music and how many submissions they get. And they pretty much, decision was made that these calls would be made at the sub-publisher level, and there would be influence, at, with a core group of people, at my company. So for instance, if, we do get, if someone sends us, a submission, unsolicited, and we think it's good, we will pass it off to our partner libraries, but there's no guarantee. So, in our case, the decisions aren't made. We don't make the decision. We have really little influence. You know, but that's not the same way, it is with, other production music libraries. So, for instance, most are on their websites, they have, directions about, if you do want to submit, if you're, an independent composer, an artist, some of them will listen to you and, give you direct feedback. Some will say, they have a hybrid model sort of like ours where they're creating their own music and they're also repping, libraries from around the world, and they don't make, that decision either. So, it's really just, how we're set up. We don't make, our obligation and responsibility is to license the music that we have, and not really to be sitting around listening to, new music. So I do that on my off time here. But, and like I said, if someone still sends me something and I think it's great, or in these listening rooms, if I hear something great, I mean, if I love it that much, I will, go to bat for it. But I'm just saying the influence is just, minimal, because the decisions are made somewhere else around the world. And, our responsibility as a company is to, license what we have. So that's just how I'm set up. I know that, at labels and other, boutique houses, it's different, or, maybe it's, a similar type thing where we just can't get inundated, with submissions after submissions. There's just too much. I think it's also just how is the decision process being made? What is needed? How is it determined what is needed? And what is the workflow?
So that's a volume thing and a work product, a working, situation, which is a workflow, excuse me, a situation, which is really fascinating. I never thought about it. Amanda, would you be able to speak on kind of the, legal side of this, or the potential, upsides and downsides to that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly what Deborah just said is a lot of what I see go into it, but also liability is a concern. If you, for example, have heard someone's or have had access to somebody's music and you then produce something that's similar, you're looking at an infringement claim. And so a lot of companies just don't want to even go there. There's enough risk as it is in the music business. They just can't have that added level of liability. And you're also dealing with people who you don't have contracts with yet, so that's more liability.
Makes perfect sense. Actually, I'm going to do one last follow up that I get. We use these nights to discuss, common themes and also common things that hit our DMs kind of over and over again, but are maybe not worthy of an entire room discussion, but are fun to bring up on these nights. We get a lot of questions in our room about writing to brief, and how specific things get, and sound alikes, and how close you can get and how close you can not. Is there any concern with, if I'm a writer, which I am, but I'm just saying, if I'm Joe Schmo writer and I get a brief that's very specific, but actually doesn't give me any other songs, but says, hey, I want you to write a song about rainbows and getting to the other side of things and looking on the brighter side and very specific things. And there happens to be another song that has that specific topic and things like that. Are creators liable if they've never heard the other song, and they're writing direct to a brief from a corporation?
Like if they write something eerily similar?
Yeah, like let's say the music is not similar, but the topic and structure are similar.
Potentially. There's case law on this. Famously, George Harrison was sued for copying for My Sweet Lord. And the argument is always, well, I didn't have access to the underlying songs, so I can't have infringed it. And that's just not how the law leans, unfortunately. So you will often be on the hook to give the other writer some percentage if it is found that the song is too similar. That being said, that changes from time to time. We've seen lots of cases from the Vanilla Ice case with Queen to the Sam Smith case with Tom Petty. Like, these are all things that have wound up giving other writers, famous writers, percentages of new songs. So that certainly can happen, and anyone can write a song about a theme. But if it's too close for comfort, then a court may order you to give up part of that song.
That is fascinating. It's something we talk about, right, Eric? We talk about this a lot in this room. We get a lot of questions about how close you can get to a brief. And I think we've always talked about the topic of, people send briefs with 3 or 4 songs that they go, oh, I love this Dua Lipa song, or I love this Nicki Minaj song, or I love this whatever. And, here are the things that we like, but don't copy it and all that stuff. But, it's interesting that if you don't hear that song and you take the precautions to not hear that song, but you're still writing to a brief. We did it once. Someone gave us, we got 4 different briefs, one from Carter actually, that were asking us to write about war. And we wrote a song about war. And then one of our other co-writers, completely separate of us, sent us a song and goes, oh, that sounds like this song I wrote for war. So it's interesting to me because even though I had never heard it and the song is not out, our songs ended up being similar because when you're writing to briefs and people are kind of, hitting the same tropes over and over and over again, they're bound to kind of bump into each other. So it's interesting.
Seth, this exists, and I'm sure you know, in the library world and the production music
I
world.
mean, in the wake of the Blur.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Deb.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Okay, well, I was going to say this exists in the library world and the production music world, where we will get briefs that will say, we want they'll send us a reference track. It'll be a famous track. And the client fell in demo love. Everyone knows what demo love is, meaning, a creative or producer or someone, somewhere, put the famous track up to picture and the client fell in love with it. Then they found out it was going to cost $300,000 to license, and now they don't know what to do. So they come to us and, other, music sources, and they say, well, we obviously can't license this. So do you have anything in this vein or in this style or in the sound? And they're called sound alikes or style likes, meaning they're meant to evoke that same style with the same instrumentation. And that's where, you have to be very careful, because you want to have those types of music in your library because you want to have, tracks that sound like whatever's popular, because it's going to get licensed. Those are, the tracks that, people are looking for because they can't afford Dua Lipa. But, you also have to make sure that you're working with a source that indemnifies you should a claim be made. And that also has, carries an E&O policy, which is errors and omissions policy, in the event that a claim is made. Also, ideally, there should be some body, meaning a group of people at, the publisher or the library that reviews all these tracks. And if in doubt, if they think it's too close, they hire musicologists. And also, that could be very subjective too. You can hire 5 musicologists to get 5 different opinions. But if any one of them says to you, no, I wouldn't put that in the catalog. It's just too close. You drop it, because the chance of getting sued is, if it gets used, it gets out there and they hear it, and they will hear it. Especially like on, sites like YouTube. I mean, everything, it gets flagged. You don't want to take the chance. It doesn't matter, how many levels of insurance you have. It's messy. Most, don't litigate, but it goes to settlement. So it's something that, most, people in my world have to deal with, because that's why clients are coming to us, because they can't afford the original track, but they don't want to lose that same spirit or vein. So it's something that I feel like we're always dancing on, a fine line. We don't want to go out of our way to advertise it, but we also want people to know that, yes, we do have music in this style of whatever it is that you're referencing, that we're not going to say out loud like Voldemort or something.
Amazing. Go ahead, Amanda.
In the wake of the blurred lines decision, that's even more of a concern, because it currently is paper line up with the Marvin Gaye song. It was too close to a jury, and so therefore we're kind of in these like in between waters until the next decision comes out that reins that back in. And right now, you have to be very careful with sound alikes, especially.
All right, so that's, if I'm going to sum it all up for our room, if it's my favorite expression. If it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's probably a duck. So listen to your music, and if you feel like you're all going, hey, it sounds like that Dua Lipa song, or hey, it sounds like this song, maybe consider changing a bunch of stuff or not putting that song into your catalog so that you don't have the liability of causing your self or the people that you're working with any pain. Thanks for that, ladies. Since it's around 6:30, I'd actually love to open the floor up to our audience, since we have so many great people and so many smart speakers on the stage from all different parts of the business. I'd love to have any questions. So what we'll do is we'll keep talking, and you guys can raise your hands. We'll turn hand raising on, if I can get it on.
I
And
turned it on.
then,
It's on.
thanks, Eric. Queue up, and we'll bring you up if anyone has any questions.
Cool.
Hey, I
Awesome.
had a question, even though I'm on the stage. But I, Eric, hey, bro, how are you, man?
Good, Craig. Always good to see you, man. And before you ask your question,
Oh,
I was going to tell you to because you've been here before, but let people also know about your company. We didn't give you the chance to do that before, so tell them about your
sure,
company
sure, sure.
with along with your
Well,
question.
I'll do it briefly. Definitely don't want to belabor this, but Rat Plug Live is the name of the company. It's basically an app. You can download it and go on there, and you can see a lot of what's happening on the inside of the industry, from master classes with some of the big dogs and like Eric Bellinger. We have one coming up with Rick Ross soon. We have Drummer Boy, and we've got a lot of plug talk. Leslie Brathwaite, 9-time Grammy Award winner, and just a lot of great people in our community. And what we're trying to do is create a real marketplace so people can go there and be fed, especially those who are really pursuing the music industry, to find out more about what's going on, the trends, the legal side, the management side, the agent side, the publishing side, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the space that we live in. It says rap plug, but it also hits R&B, and there are a lot of people in the pop space who tap in as well. We're collaborating with Medem this year. We're doing Medem Africa this month, and then we're doing the larger Medem in November, a bigger collaboration. And Rick Ross, who's our business partner, is also going to be the keynote speaker for that. So if you guys attend that, that'll be cool too. But yeah, man, we're having, just so you know, Eric, we're having an event on the 17th. I'd love for you to come out. It's going to be at the Dream downtown. It's a club down there, and I'll send you the flyer to Eric so you can share it. But it's going to be downtown on the 17th. We'd love to have you in the room. We're going to do a panel with some of the industry greats and just have a real conversation, a candid conversation about the industry. And then we're going to do a showcase and have a lot of young people come in. And I say young in the game, I don't mean young, but young artists in the game come in, perform, do their thing, and we'll just give them the platform to make the noise they want to make. And then we'll post what they do on the site. Now, that brought me to my point of actually joining this today. I heard you guys talking about something, and it kind of it struck a chord with me. And Eric, I've been doing this a long time, but it's a beautiful thing how you can enter a room like this and you go, wait a minute, they're talking about something I'm learning about right now. And so this particular group was perfectly on point for me. And the question I had was, you were talking about sync and you were talking about live performance and licensing. And I think it was you, Steph, that kind of led that charge. And I wanted to ask you a question here because we've been talking about this quite a bit. Um, and so even if I have the answer I think I have, I want to hear you touch on this for me. And that is, if an artist is performing, as you said, one time and we're live streaming it, how do we protect ourselves if they're doing a popular song or just something else, something original that they created? How do we protect ourselves? And then secondly, if we were doing it pay-per-view or pay on demand, what is the process there? Because clearly there, you described two different things, and I walked in at the end of it, but I wanted to make sure what you were saying was what I heard earlier.
That was actually Amanda's genius. I
Oh, that
asked the
was
question,
Amanda's
but
genius. Okay.
Amanda is the brains behind that question. Amanda, do you want to jump
Okay,
in here?
great.
Sure. So under the law, you need to have a public performance license for all music that you perform publicly. So that would be for live streams and anything on demand. You also, for anything on demand that is not exclusively live, needs to be You need a synchronization and master use license. Synchronization license for the underlying composition, and master use license for the recording. If you are creating the master recording while you are doing a live stream, for example, and there are no samples in that, then you can maybe get around the master requirement depending on if the person performing is signed to a label or not. Sometimes labels will waive their exclusive rights, but oftentimes they'll say no, anything that's created we own with respect to masters. So this is like a rabbit hole that we could go down very deeply, but essentially you need a master use license for the master, a synchronization license for the composition, and a public performance license for the composition.
Awesome. Well, we definitely will. I'll inbox you and we'll talk some more because I think we would like to have. Are you located in LA?
I am. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, we're part time in LA, so that's great. And the name
Awesome.
of the club is Believe. Sorry. And Eric, I just sent you a flyer too. So if you're in town, pull up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, man.
That's a great question, Craig. And, I would just, again, encourage everybody, you want to speak to an attorney that can hear, at all sides of your situation, because these things can be so nuanced. And also a really good point of, don't make an assumption that just because it's good for an artist or good for you or good for the label that they will always recognize that. That's a big common mistake that's made in this business. Labels especially often work against themselves, even though they try as they might not to. They very often do, because sometimes it's just too hard for them to get around their antiquated rules and regulations, even if it is a good opportunity. So make sure that everybody in the room is consulting an attorney on those kind of situations, and don't make assumptions.
100%.
Thank you
And
for that.
be very careful and talk to attorneys. Yes.
Absolutely. No, thank you. I heard the word Harry Fox. It came up several times today. So I'm assuming that's definitely a part of the conversation.
Yes, that will be.
All right. Good deal.
What up,
There are
Craig?
a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yes.
Okay.
Talk to a lawyer, everybody.
But no, and frankly, just for those who came in late, like I did, Eric had mentioned something with Twitch, which really kind of sparked it because you said something about them getting flagged. Somebody got flagged, Eric. What'd
Yeah,
you
they
say?
had some takedown notices because if we're on that, if you're on that app, then you're able to live stream music. And Amanda was explaining that the live stream is covered because the app pays for, they do the performance protection, the performance right, and so that part is covered. But as soon as you go, if you're using copyrighted music, as soon as you go and then archive that, it then becomes something that requires the synchronization and the master use. And so live streaming is one thing, but the on demand or saving it on demand or archiving that live stream then causes a problem. So Twitch just got a whole bunch of takedown notices for people who've used copyrighted music. One thing, okay, that they used it in the live stream, but then archiving it and saving it caused a whole nother slew of problems.
Okay.
It's the
Yep.
replaying that's the issue.
Yep. Exactly. Because you're basically monetizing over and over again, and you're not allowing them to do so.
Yeah, it's not live anymore. Now it's like a little TV show, and
Yep.
it's all the same now. It's either live or it's not, and I'm
Right.
waiting for our industry to catch up. Herman, if a PTR, it looks like you're up first for questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. As usual, a great, informative session. Um, so my question is basically, I guess a couple months ago, I a friend of mine referred me to somebody to do some custom work for I guess a motorcycle apparel company of sorts. It was just three pieces that I did, instrumental stuff. There was nothing signed or talked about in terms of rights of the songs or anything. It was just like we need some music for promotional videos, I guess, and kick me a few $100 and then just there's some songs, right? So I guess my question is, are those songs or are those pieces game to be pitched somewhere else, or are they just I mean, because there was, like I said, there was no really documentation signed or anything, you know, it was just pretty much very informal. So are those pieces game to be pitched to other opportunities should the opportunities arise, or just better forget about those pieces? What do you guys recommend? Thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, what was your understanding with the company? Even if you didn't have a contract, did you have an email that said you're making them for the company and they're theirs? Like, what do you think their understanding is?
Not sure, because actually I kind of dealt with a friend of mine because he used to do the songs for them. So I guess maybe I gotta ask my friend how kind of like those things work before I move into any kind of opportunities with that material, I suppose.
Watch my lawyer potentially cringe from my answer on this one. But for me, if I don't have a contract signed with someone, it's still within my rights to do whatever I need. You know, if someone didn't hire me for a work for hire, saying in advance it's going to belong to them, it's not going to belong to them, because you can't work for hire after the fact. It's one amazing thing that I learned from Amanda. You can't retroactively work for hire, even though everyone in our industry tries to do it. You have to do it up front before. And then the other thing is, if you don't have a contract, it's your song. You didn't give up your rights, to the song. But Amanda, tell me if you disagree with that.
I would highly suggest that you speak to an entertainment lawyer because Steph is not wrong, but you need to disclose all the facts and emails and everything that you may have to a lawyer and have them look at what you have and see if there's any kind of implied contract.
All right, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Hey, what's up, Brandon? We got you next. How you doing? Brandon Chris, also from Rap Plug Live.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm not going to talk too much about Rap Plug because Craig already gave the whole spiel. But this is amazing. You guys have answered a lot of questions. We work with a lot of artists, and they are really curious about these types of things. So I have a two-part question. One, we spoke a lot about the public performance license and sync and things like that. Does that also apply to instrumentals? Because you have a lot of producers out there who produce, and sometimes the beat may be used for a commercial and for a trailer and things like that. Do they have the same rights that the artists have in regards to receiving compensation or having to have certain licenses and things like that? Will Twitch or Instagram or any other platform flag an instrumental if the words aren't there? That is the first question. And then the second part of that was I heard a mentioning about a contract, and that's sometimes that if you are an artist or a talent and you sign a contract saying that it's on you to cover certain licenses and things like that to do a show or an event, does that also apply to the sync? Because, like you said, live stream, show versus something that's being put on demand and pay-per-view, can artists be stuck, in that scenario as well?
Go ahead, Amanda.
Um, the second question is yes, the artist can be stuck depending on what's in their contract that they sign. If they assume the obligation to clear everything that they provide, then they are on the hook for that. So it's just a contract by contract basis. And at a certain point, all artists should obtain legal counsel to make sure they're not doing something that's negatively impacting them. And as far as the instrumental question, yes, instrumentals are covered by copyright law. Beats are. It's interesting because sometimes there's a little bit of squishiness around that. Right as of right now, yes, they're protectable, but that changes daily. Like it depends on what the courts decide with respect to things that are not specifically lyrics and melody. So but for right now, let's say you create a beat and that's the backing track and there's no vocal. Yes, that would be protectable, and you would need a license for that.
All right, thank you so much, Amanda.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's see who's up next. Let me just PTR. Eric.
Yeah, hi everyone. I've been coming to these for a few weeks now, and the after parties, and I love all the information that you guys give week after week. You just drop gems. And so my question is, so I'm trying to get into music supervision. I'm looking at licensing. I'm looking at publishing as well. And my question is, when you're just starting out, like myself, trying to get into the licensing or publishing space. Um, do you all, in your opinions, think it's more viable to kind of start forging your own path, maybe starting your own kind of a sync company, or to put more energy into joining a pre-existing licensing or publishing company itself?
Carter. Deborah. Either you want to chime in on that one?
I was listening to that. I was like, uh, here's what I would say. Nobody knows you, but if you show up with a shingle that people do know, then you'll be taken seriously, and then people will start to know you, and now you can do your thing. So, in other words, people who are looking for stuff, who, by the way, probably need it more than you need to sell it, um, they want to know they're getting it from a reputable source and that everything is sorted out. And there's no reason for you to build that from scratch. I would highly recommend that you get yourself involved with a reputable pitch company or a publisher, label, anything. But don't uh, just going out by yourself from the get go doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
I think that's a great answer. Thanks, Eric. Okay, who's up next? Tiz, you got a question for us?
Yes. Thanks so much for hosting this. Really appreciate it every time. My question is, I was speaking with my music lawyer, and he was saying that signing with somebody like Centric Music or a smaller publisher that just negotiates on your behalf can lower the value of your music, and it makes more serious publishing deals or bigger sync opportunities less likely because it looks bad on your music and your brand. I was just wondering your guys' opinion if that is true, and yeah, what if there's any alternatives around that other than signing with a smaller sync agency.
Do me a favor, repeat the question.
Yes, so if I was signing with a small sync agency, and they're negotiating on your behalf for generally quite small fees, if that lowers the value of your music.
Oh, Carter, that's another good kind of hold the line question for a publisher. But anybody else want to take that one? Give Carter a break.
I
Crickets.
got
All
it.
right, Carter,
I
you're
got
up.
it. Um, yeah, the perception. Well, here there's two ways to there are two aspects to that. One is if it's a tiny little no name taxi style, uh, small schmendricky little thing. Chances are you're not getting into the big rooms anyway, so nobody will remember. The people at Warner Brothers and DreamWorks and Fox or former Fox, Disney, whatever, Netflix, Amazon, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, man, I remember this guy from that aggregate online um, site. But on the other hand, there may be smaller organizations like trailer houses and other sync rep people who will remember. I think that it's a possibility to sort of go in steps. If that's what you can get at first, yeah, knock yourself out. Why not? What do you got to lose? And then as you start to gain placements, you reserve your stuff. You don't give them everything. You give them a certain. It's called a Schedule A. It's got all. These are the songs you guys represent, and then you just keep doing your thing, making great music. they can do these at the beginning. If they can land spots for you, great. And now you can say you had something on 90 Day Fiance. And then as you get better, and you start to have these things on your CV, your resume looks fatter, then you can probably get into bigger shops. So I wouldn't say avoid it completely, but that can't be your end game.
And I
I
just
think.
wanted to add. Oh, I'm sorry, Steph.
Nope. Go ahead, Deborah.
I just wanted to add to that, and completely correct that the other downside of, I mean, there are some really great independent sync agents out there that are former music supervisors themselves, or former agency execs, or just, I mean, they have really good shops going with great talent on the roster and a great sizzle reel. The problem is, though, if it's a really good track, they're going to want exclusivity on it. So you're kind of putting your eggs in one basket and waiting for the right all these stars to align for them to pitch it either direct to brand or to the music supervisors themselves, which you can do if you have the network in place. And then you've given them exclusivity, and if you don't give them exclusivity, they're not going to be as motivated to pitch it. And it definitely, I wouldn't use the word dilute, but if you sign with several different sync agents in this respect and you give them all your best tracks, and non-exclusive rights, there could be a tendency for them to just sit. So, the people that they're talking to are people that you can develop relations with directly and invest some time, energy, and upfront. Become a friend of the Guild of Music Supervisors. Find out who the soups are in TV and film and commercials. Reach out and create your own network, because that's who they're pitching to as well. So it doesn't mean you could do both, but just keep in mind that the best sync agents in the business are going to want exclusivity on your tracks.
I think that is amazing advice. And I would also, follow up by saying, listen, you get to call the shots on terms of setting your own price at any time. And just because you set a precedence of agreeing to do something for $500 doesn't mean you have to agree to do that again in the future. So you can, do that. They might ask you, you can be aware that precedence is a real thing. And they might say, oh, well, I heard you did this for $500. Can you do it for me again? Or you did it last time for this. But there are very polite ways where you can just say, hey, I've grown a bit and our operations grown a bit, and or this license in particular calls for a different pricing. I'm happy to give you a break, but we need to adjust the pricing. So you get to set that every time.
On the topic of precedents, you can also blame your lawyer.
Amanda we had a company that tried to hold us to a contract for a one-off work for hire internal song only from 3 years ago, and tried to get us to sign a contract for an entire TV series based on a contract. So Amanda has been teaching me left and right about precedents. It's a real thing. People will do it in the industry. They will hold you to this one small decision you made at a specific time. But as I've learned over and over again, you have rights. Everyone in this room, repeat after me. You have rights. I have rights. So I think that's a really critical thing that you have to, keep in mind as an artist. I think it's very easy to, feel like you don't have rights as an artist and you have to just, do whatever you're told to do to get that gig. But, you have rights. Okay. I'm going to move on to Sabrina.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for this room. This is amazing, amazing as always. So I think I heard content ID brought up just briefly earlier. I did get in a little bit late, so if this was already addressed, I apologize if it's repetitious in any way. But my question regarding content ID is I'm curious for other artists in the room who have had sync placements, if you do sign up for YouTube content ID for your specific sync songs. I've heard recently that some sync agencies are not fond of artists signing up for YouTube content ID because it can cause problems down the line with some licenses and, someone else putting up the video on their channel, because they're a fan of the show it was in or whatever. So I guess the question is sort of twofold. The first question is, can you do content ID on YouTube for your sync songs? And if you can't, is there another way to monetize when other people post your song to their YouTube channel, if that makes sense?
For the first part, I'll say that will depend on whether you're working, like you said, through an agency or a library or through another party, or you're doing a direct. If you work, the reason why some of the agencies or libraries may and ask the artists not to do the content IDs because they're intending on doing it themselves. They may be doing promo on YouTube, or they may be pushing the songs in the catalog, and it seems to be a real hassle, like, for multiple people to have the same kind of song. And on this, it's just a kind of messed up system now, and it's not easy. Like, one person is kind of like first come first serve, and so they want to reserve the right to be the one to push it. And then sometimes, if you'll talk as an artist, and Psychosis may have some experience here, but as an artist, if you are working with an agent and you talk to them and say, hey, I'm going to release this myself. I'm going to release this on Spotify. And so I want to be able to control that. Then you can have that conversation with them. But that's a discussion. I've had that with a library that I did an exclusive release with, but we retain the right to release the album ourselves and control that.
Great answer, Eric. Okay, Dave, you're up next.
Hello, everyone. I had a few different questions trying to decide which one, but
We are going to try to get you to do one, Dave, only because we got 10
okay.
minutes left.
All right. I've been developing a relationship with a publisher, kind of a mentorship program. So I'm going to try to run my songs for sync through them first because they do that as well. My question is, when I'm co-writing with other people and I want to try to get the publisher to represent some songs, but how different should I approach that with a publisher as opposed to a library or a sync agency? So how do they handle that? And is there the possibility that they might want to, if they really like a song, they want, rather than placing it in sync, they might be interested in having someone cut the song, and then do you have to specify you want to stay away from that, or can you just kind of give me some direction about how you might deal with pitching to a publisher as opposed to some of the other avenues for sync?
Dave, is your concern, just to clarify your question, is your concern about having songs that have other songwriters attached to them, not just yourself, and how that affects a publisher
Yes.
representing you?
Yes.
Okay, you can, in short, I muted myself. In short, you can certainly have a deal where a publisher reps, a piece of your song, and another publisher or another entity reps a piece of your song. I know that could be confusing because in this room, especially in sync, we really encourage and like easy, clear, and one-stop publishing sort of situations to make things as easy as possible especially when you're independent. But the larger that you get, the less likely that tends to happen, or the less, that tends to happen. So multiple publishers can rep songs. I can have, Carter send me something and we can do 50% of it with Pierre, and I might write with Jizzle, who is on Sony ATV, and she has 50% of it. And those respective companies just represent those pieces. And if they don't have a publisher, then that writer represents themselves as their own publisher. So it's certainly possible. You don't have to, think about certainly anything differently. And then if you're asking, do you want to try to get them into that company? I've seen it many times where great artists bring other great writers to their publishers and say, hey, you're missing out on another great co-writer of mine. That's also how a lot of writers get discovered. You bring your writing partners into a publisher, and then they say, oh, hey, we want to rep you too. So those are always options. But yeah, you don't have to fear writing with other writers. It's certainly we're able to do it. Mo, my buddy.
Hi, I am so happy to be here, and I am so excited, y'all. Dr. E. Michael Harrington is downstairs. He was on the Blurred Lines case. He was one of the guys that helped. He's a musicologist. He was my professor at Belmont. He's so nice,
I'm gonna pull him up. Hold on.
and yeah, he is just. Saw him when you were talking about the case, and he's just a wonderful human being and is so knowledgeable about anything that is copyright infringement.
Well,
Well,
welcome, Doc.
well, thank you. Geez, I didn't expect to. I was just listening. So,
Oh, we're glad
um,
you're able to stop through. So you were a musicologist on the case.
I was involved in the appeal at the Ninth Circuit. The 212 musicians brought me in because they cited me in three different places, and then I got invited to co-author an amicus brief with Ken Freundlich. So, and I was also involved with Led Zeppelin and Katy Perry. So I do that kind of stuff. I think I excel at stopping lawsuits because there are so many frivolous lawsuits these days. And blurred lines was one of the biggest problems because it was the first time ever there was no one took any melody or lyrics or chord progression, rhythmic features. There was no lyrics. There was no sampling issue. So I'm working way more than I ever thought I would be to stop dumb lawsuits.
So you said, do you still teach at Belmont?
No, I teach at Berkeley.
At Berkeley. Oh, so has this changed after Blurred Lines? Did it change the advice you gave any of your students in terms of composing and sound alikes or any of that?
It's a great question. I think what happened initially, it led to a lot of foolish lawsuits, but then things calmed down a bit. It wasn't as bad because there was no language that came out of it that would get people to say, "Oh, but look, here's this phrase. You know, the phrase that says we can do this." You know, like in the Two Live Crew case at the Supreme Court, they said you have to strike at the heart of the original when you copy something for the purpose of a parody. You know, there's sometimes a court case will lay something wonderful on everyone, but this one didn't. So no, I keep saying the same thing, and I can keep showing people a lot of songs have the exact same melody in some very key places, and yet they don't infringe. So it can't. It's always a case by case basis, and it's how original is the expression. So my advice hasn't changed, but I always want to caution people. You know, attorneys always do this too, to say that if you bring the case, if you bring the lawsuit, it's not, you don't win. You're likely to have to pay everyone else's cost. So that should be a good incentive to, be sober and calm about it.
So cool. I really appreciate you stepping on stage and just getting to meet
Oh,
you. We'd love to hopefully you could come back and we can have a more in-depth legal music discussion. That'd be really cool.
I'd love to. Yeah, sure. So
Okay.
anyway, well, thanks, Mo, for introducing me, and for she texted me to say get in on this. So I appreciate it.
Dr. Harrington, I love hearing it sounds like a Boston accent over there.
That's what it is. Yeah, even though I live in Nashville. Yeah.
That
What word did I say?
intonation.
I say harmony or
No,
something?
you said something about
Yeah.
you did. It was an H word. I heard it too.
I'm
Okay.
married to one of yours, so
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
one of
picked
my
it up.
people. I get it.
Amanda, I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Do you have any, follow ups or any questions? Amanda's an
No,
amazing.
I mean, that's great. That's wonderful, wonderful insight, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Cool.
Dr. Harrington, where that came from, the question started just so you have context for the room, because we'd love to, like Eric said, we'd love to have you back on another night to discuss it further, is we're constantly having the discussion of, when we're writing to brief, or, you're getting a lot of the same brief from different people, or you're getting, briefs with, hey, I want it to sound like these three songs or any of these three songs. It is a constant issue to where to skirt the line and how to be as original you can when there's only 12 notes, and we've done it all before and we've talked about it all before. So
Yeah, it's really tough. It's case by case basis. What I can do that's fortunate is I can back it up with this. I have two enormous databases that are proprietary with me because I've taught music theory for years, and I transcribe music like every day, and I have it in these databases, so I can quickly call up and identify melodies very fast. As well as public domain, but all mine are more valuable because uh, they're in copyright. So I can say, well, this one did it here, and you can always find back to Beethoven and Pergolesi and other people.
This is amazing. I'm going to stop nerding out because we could probably go all night
Oh,
on this
okay,
subject.
we'll nerd out another time. That'll be great.
Yes, I'm going to hit you
Sure.
offline. We'll nerd out. But
Okay.
we really appreciate your insight here. And I think you gave our room an amazing piece of advice where it doesn't, always matter right or wrong to be sober in your and conscious about your decisions to pursue things and really understand and be sure that you have been ripped off before you go making, claims.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great idea. Cool.
Thank you again so much. We look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Thank you, Steph.
And thank you, Mo, for the introduction.
Thank you, Mo. You're amazing as always.
I'm so glad that he came up here, and I hope you come back, Dr. Harrington. These are
Ab-
wonderful people that always educate, and I want him to come to the after party because he's a really good cook too.
Oh, snap.
Join the club, Doc. We got you. Hit the
This
local
sounds
house.
wonderful. Excellent. I'm there.
We got one last question before we wrap up for the night. McKinney.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep. How you
Yep,
doing,
we got
McKinney?
you.
Cool, cool. So I'm in a situation where a friend of mine who has a song on his album that I'm the featured artist for is licensing the song, but the portion of the song that's being used in the ad isn't my verse. So my question is, am I entitled to any kind of royalties or money of sorts? Even though my portion of the song isn't being used, and even in reverse, like vice versa, like if I were to license a song where someone featured on my project, but the portion of their verse wasn't used, do I then have to extend the olive branch and give them money?
I love this question.
Me too. Carter, you want to jump in? He's probably cooking dinner.
Hey, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we
you're totally right. Remember how I said I was going to be distracted because I'm multitasking? There it is. So what was the issue? The question?
So McKinney has a collaborator who got a sync on a song that I guess they did, but McKinney's only on his. He's the featured vocalist, but he's only featured on like one verse, and that verse wasn't part of the sync, and so he wants to know, is he entitled to anything?
Yep. Yeah, it's like if you're on the song, you're on the song. Did you guys
Okay,
work
looks
out the
like I need
splits
to get a
before?
lawyer then.
Did you work? Yeah,
Uh,
did you work out the splits already? Do you have a publishing? Do you
I'll
have
be
a
honest,
cop? Do
we
you have a
didn't.
publishing share?
We didn't work out the splits. We did it a long time ago, and it was like a friend thing. So nah.
Yeah,
Those
that's the thing.
those
You got to
friends
work. It's
things.
not. It can be uncomfortable, but you really have to work this stuff up front, out up front, because what happens is when something goes and you're just trying to skiffle it together, that's when it becomes uncomfortable, and you might not end up with what you deserve. If you're on the song, you should have some portion of the. If you wrote part of the song, you should have some portion of the publishing copyright. No
I
matter.
do think I'm a lyricist on the copyright though.
Well, then that's fine. Then I mean, as long as if the song is like registered with the PROs and the splits are set up, then you're good. Just because your portion is not on the song doesn't matter at all.
Carter's making a really important distinction too that I want to clarify for the room because this also comes up a lot. There is a difference between, and you've heard me advocating for singers and other people to actually write songs, especially women and BIPOC creators, because there are a lot of amazing featured singers on songs that make a decent amount of money from singing on songs. But that doesn't entitle you to the publishing or the writer share of that song. So if you're not writing on a song, if you're the featured vocalist and you're just singing, sometimes you get cut in if you're lucky and you get paperwork and they want to let you in. They can if they're being nice, and sometimes they don't. But really, you have to be the writer on the song. And then the second distinction Carter is making with that is if you're sharing a piece of the writer share, um, any piece of that pie, no one should be able to distinguish, between which piece that is. And actually, Daraj just had a placement, where most of the instrumental was used and less of his vocal was used. Whether he made that or not, instrumental wise, it's his song. He gets a piece of that song. So, make sure you're buttoning up your business and make sure you're getting your split sheets done. Amanda, you want to chime in here?
Absent a written agreement to the contrary, y'all own the song equally under the law. So that's actually probably better for you. But definitely consult a lawyer, because this can get messy and people can get very unfriendly very quickly.
Amanda, would you mind telling our room about equal splits and what you're talking about?
So under copyright law, and this is an entire class that can be taught, if you don't have an agreement that states your specific splits of a composition or a recording or a piece of art, it doesn't matter. Any work protectable by copyright, if you contribute to that work, you have a claim to copyright ownership. And that claim under the law, unless you have an agreement to the contrary, is equal copyright ownership with all contributors to that work.
So if there's 5 of you and you don't have an agreement, it's assumed that you all own 20% of the song, of whatever it is, by default.
And you can all exploit that work however you want, only subject to an obligation to report and account to your co-owners.
But keep in mind, everybody, that you still have to get the other 4 people to agree to stuff in sync. So Amanda's absolutely 100% right. You have the right to exploit it, but just remember, and that's when we're talking about, I think it was David's question earlier, when you have other publishers on it, those other members of the group can, have the right to refuse that sync if they disagree with it. So that's why we're always kind of pushing for indie artists to try to get, easy, clear, or know exactly who you're doing your business with, and making sure that you're, have good relationships with all of your co-writers.
And with that, we are at the end of the room. This has been a nonstop discussion. This has been really awesome. For anybody who's just happened to walk in, I just want you to know this is Control Camp. We are Control Camp. It's a community of independent artists, business owners, sync licensors, supervisors, all people with a stake in licensing music for various media, television, video, ads, video games, etc. And so I appreciate everyone who's been on the stage. If you want to know more about Control Camp, you can go to our website, ctrlcamp.com. If you're not following our club, you should, because that's the only way you get access to the after party, which happens in about 30 seconds. So look at the Control Camp and the green icon above my image on this app in the upper left-hand corner. If you click on the green house, you'll be able to follow the club. And if you follow the club, then the after party will show up in your hallway and you can come hang out. The only rule, and 2 things in the after party: we don't curate it so anybody can come up on stage. It's not stage and audience. You can listen if you just want, but we don't also pull up select people. Anyone who wants to come up on the stage, just raise your hand when you walk in and you'll be pulled up to the stage. And rule number 2 is we do not talk about sync or business. This is a getting to know each other room where we talk about everything but. And so it's actually really, really great, as Paige said in the very beginning, just been a great way to just get to know each other, get to know people outside of a business context, and get some organic, real relationships going. So with that, I don't know if Daraj is here. He's actually been in and out in a session this evening, so his icon's there, but he may not be here to speak or say goodbye, but he'll probably jump into the after party if he can. But I want to thank Paige and Psychosis and Amanda, Carter, Jess, Craig, Deb, Mo, and Dr. Harrington for coming through. Thank you all for being here and just sharing. Thank you for just giving so much to all these conversations. We really just appreciate you each week all coming in. So Steph, any last words?
No, just thanks for giving such amazing advice. I actually just texted Amanda. I feel like she should be billing me for these 2 hours. And Amanda, thank you for letting us put you on the spot. It's we've all been in the kind of entertainment law rooms, and they're not always as straightforward as you're being, and you're giving us a lot of really great advice. And everybody, Carter, Deborah, Mo, Dr. Harrington, what a fun surprise. Psychosis, Craig, you went down the list. Daraj, we missed you. And yeah, come join the after party. Let's go talk about Eric's disgusting pizza choices.
We're gonna stop that right now.
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
We'll see you later. Come join us if you can.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, Tommy, I see you here too. You must have just stepped out for a second, but we're
I had to step out and back in.
Thank
Much
you for
love,
being.
guys. Enjoyed the
Thanks,
night.
Tommy.
Come into the after party if you can, Tommy.
Thanks,
Yeah, you know what? Great seeing you.